Star Trek, The Next Generation, Starfleet Academy, Mystery of the Missing Crew. Chapter 7. Data didn't blame the yawn on the bridge for not believing him. He found it a little hard to believe himself. "Are you sure?" asked Odril. The android nodded. "Quite sure." "All 6 of them?" inquired Philae, looking skeptical. "All 6, the android confirmed. "But the computer told us they were immobilized by anomalies in the artificial gravity system." "They were," replied Cinna, "but it was Data who created the anomalies in the system." "But how could he have done that?" pressed Legan. "How could he have gotten access to it?" "He gained access via the ship's auxiliary control center," Cinna explained. Odril's eyes opened wider with admiration. "The auxiliary control center," he echoed. "Of course. I passed it just this morning. You know, you can be a useful being sometimes, Data." "Yes," Philae chimed in, "when it comes to technical expertise, at any rate." The android didn't take offense at the remark. Perhaps if he'd had emotions, he would have felt differently. But as it was, he saw Philae's opinion as just that, an opinion, and left it at that. Cinna, on the other hand, was not content to let the comment lie. "Data has helped us in other ways as well," she reminded her fellow yawn. "Or have you all forgotten how he handled the aliens just a little while ago?" Philae grunted. "He didn't keep them from attacking us." "No," conceded Odril, eyeing the android, "but he kept them from seeing how vulnerable we are, and in the end that may turn out to be the key to our survival." "Odril's right," observed Legan. "Besides, what have any of the rest of us accomplished? We couldn't even locate those stupid hand phasers we were looking for." "The phaser supply cabinets were protected by security safeguards," Philae pointed out. "Data would have found a way to bypass them," said Cinna. The android was beginning to feel uncomfortable at being the center of a controversy. He told the yawn as much, but it didn't seem to do any good. Whereas once they had all seemed of one mind, circumstances had forced them to take up their own individual positions, at least for the moment. The conversation would certainly have continued, except for a flashing light on the communications panel. Legan scanned his monitors, then looked up at them. "They're hailing us," he announced. His eyes met Data's. "What should we do?" The android took less than a second to make his decision, though he wished he could have made it with more confidence. "Answer them," he said simply, placing himself in the captain's seat once more. Abruptly, the scene on the view screen changed. Where it had earlier displayed an image of the alien ship, it now showed them the skeletal face of that ship's commander, and if he was less than pleased before, he was positively grim now. "As you can see," the alien intoned, "we mean what we say. Rest assured, those robots were only a taste of what is in store for you, and a mild taste at that, unless you move off as we have instructed." Unfortunately, Data could not have complied with the alien's wishes even if he had wanted to. The Yosemite's propulsion system was still useless, and as long as that was the case, neither he nor the yawn were going anywhere. On the other hand, the ship's phasers were back online, and by eluding the aliens' robots, they had given the phaser batteries an opportunity to charge up. All he had to do was give the word, and they could blast away at the other vessel. "As before," the alien warned, "you have 5 lunar millicycles. Be certain you make the correct choice, Captain Data. The lives of your crew will depend on it." Data was not surprised when the skeletal visage disappeared. At least that aspect of the commander's behavior was becoming quite predictable to him. A silence settled on the bridge. Data looked around and saw that his companions were all staring at him, perhaps because he was the one in the center seat. "What are we going to do?" asked Odril. "We can't just sit here and let them blast us to atoms." "We don't have to," Philae pointed out. "Not when we can blast them first. If our phasers are operational again, we can beat them to the punch." The android nodded. "I came to that conclusion more than a minute ago." "Then why didn't you give the order?" Philae asked impatiently. "What are you waiting for?" Data turned to the view screen. Why indeed? What was stopping him? "Because," he said at last, There's something wrong here. Odril's voice rose an octave. Of course there's something wrong. We're in danger of being completely and utterly destroyed unless we act first. The android shook his head. No, he murmured. That is not what I mean. There is something wrong with this entire situation. Something that does not make sense. Cinna came over to stand at Data's side. The android saw her out of the corner of his eye. Data, what is it? She asked gently. What are you thinking about? Is it not strange, he asked, that the aliens chose to send robots aboard our ship rather than engage in a more conventional form of attack? One might almost deduce that conventional weapons were not an option for them, even though their ship is clearly designed to carry such weapons. Cinna's eyes narrowed as she pondered the question. You're right, she told him. That was a strange way to open hostilities. But if they're not able to use their weapons, then why are they threatening to fire on us? Inquired Odril, finishing the question for her. Perhaps, the android offered. It is a bluff, a misdirection. You mean they're lying? Asked Lagan. But for what purpose? If he were human, Data would have sighed. I do not know, he responded. Still, there had to be an answer. Perhaps by analyzing what they knew about the aliens, they could reach it. Turning to the others, he said as much. What we know about them? Repeated Fillet. But we know nothing at all. No, objected Cinna. That's not true. We know they need to eat and breathe as we do because they have the same kind of facial features, and their level of technology is about the same as ours. We also know they have transporters, grumbled Odril, or they couldn't have beamed over those robots. He glanced worriedly at the view screen. But I don't see how that knowledge is going to do us any good, particularly if we're wrong about their weapons not working. Suddenly the android had an idea. Our transporters are working too, he observed. For all the good it does us, snorted Fillet. Cinna peered at Data. I see what you're getting at. In both cases, our transporter systems work. But if your theory about their weapons not working is correct, then our conventional weapons don't. The android nodded, grateful for her assistance. It may be that we are all in, he tried to think of the proper expression. The same boat, he concluded at last. But we don't know that their weapons aren't working, argued Odril. You're just guessing about that. And besides, added Lagan, if they were in the same situation we are, their crew wouldn't be on the bridge. It would be gone, as ours is. Data turned to look at him. Perhaps their crew is gone, he said. Lagan's brows met over the bridge of his nose. But they can't be, he insisted. We've seen them. We have seen aliens, the android corrected. And we have come to the conclusion that they are in charge because it seemed logical. However, they may not be the regular crew at all. They may be inexperienced personnel posing as a bridge crew. Cinna grunted softly. A handful of frightened beginners in an all but disabled vessel, trying to give the appearance that they've got both a full crew and a fully functional ship. This is sounding more and more familiar. There's something else, Data declared. It had just occurred to him. The aliens are not wearing anything resembling communications badges. And what if they're not? Asked Odril. Maybe their species just doesn't have a use for them. But what if they do? Replied Cinna. What if Data was right about our lack of comm badges having something to do with our being left alone? Fillet looked at her. So what you're saying is the aliens' lack of comm badges proves Data's theory, and according to that theory, their lack of comm badges shows they're helpless. Lagan shook his head. This is all speculation and guesswork. The Yon had a point, the android conceded. His entire theory was constructed on observations that had alternative explanations. Still, when lined up one after another, those observations seemed sufficient to give credence to his hypothesis. You are correct, said Data. He began pacing the deck in front of the command center. And yet, If we proceed with a phaser barrage, and the aliens are as helpless as I believe them to be... Odril cut him off. We know the consequences. We'll be destroying a vessel nearly as helpless as our own, not to mention the occupants of that vessel. But if we don't destroy them, and your theory is wrong, said Fillet. His voice trailed off in an eerie way. To me, there is only one answer. We've got to hit them with every bit of force we can generate, and worry about the morality of it later. The android looked from Fillet to Odril to Legan. Perhaps they were right, he admitted inwardly. After all, their points were every bit as urgent as his, and cogent. On top of that, they had instincts, and as an artificial being, he did not. 2 minutes to go, Odril called out. We're almost out of time. Perhaps the Yon were wiser than he was, Data told himself. Perhaps the correct choice was to preempt the alien strike with one of their own. You've got to do something, complained Legan, glaring at the android. You've got to defend us, and you've got to do it now. Chapter 8. No. The word had come out of Data's mouth before he had any idea he was going to utter it. In fact, he was as surprised as anyone on the bridge. For a long, hollow moment, he endured the open-mouthed scrutiny of the Yon and wondered what had possessed him to so categorically deny Legan his request. Was this a part of his programming he had not been aware of until now? Or was he, in the very core of his being, simply that reluctant to injure an unarmed being? To the android's further surprise, Cinna agreed with him. Data's right, she decided. We can't fire our phasers at people who may be helpless to defend themselves. What are you saying? Asked Odril. You're one of us, Cinna. Surely you must see the wisdom of... What I see, Cinna interjected, is 3 scared Yon who can't see past their own need to survive. I'm scared too, but I believe in Data's theory. And I won't be part of any assault on the alien vessel. The android saw her turn to him then. There was a smile on her face, not a very confident smile, he thought, but a smile nonetheless. If Cinna had faith in his observations, and she was an organic being with instincts as strong as any of the others here, then maybe his decision was the right one after all. If you wish to fire on the aliens, he told the other Yon, you will have to do it without us. But, sputtered Legan, none of us knows how to fire the phasers. Data nodded sympathetically. Yes, he answered. I know. 1 more minute, gulped Odril. His face was an open appeal. Please, before it's too late. But, true to his word, the android didn't move. He simply watched the view screen with Cinna at his side. 40 seconds, came Odril's reminder. 35. 30. His voice was drenched with despair, but he seemed to feel it was his duty to mark the passage of time for the others. 25. 20. Hail the alien vessel, Data said suddenly. The Yon all turned to look at him, including Cinna. It's about time, muttered Fillet. Cinna's eyes narrowed. I thought... But she never got a chance to finish her remark. It was interrupted by the appearance of the alien commander on the view screen. Your time is almost up, the alien reminded them. If you intend to leave this sector, you must do so without delay. The android shook his head. I only contacted you to say that we have not changed our minds. We intend to remain here. What is more, we will take no action to prevent your attack. The alien's brows knit over his bony nose. What? He rasped. You heard me correctly, Data confirmed. We will neither move from our position nor employ defensive measures. If you have the ability to carry out your threat, feel free to do so. The alien's eyes opened wide. He blinked not once but twice. Are you insane? He asked. The android shrugged. My internal diagnostics give no indication of any positronic malfunction, he replied honestly. Why do you ask? The alien seemed on the verge of answering the question and stopped himself. It is not important, he said. All that matters is your defiance of our mandate. Since you refuse to leave, you give me no choice but to blast you and your ship to atoms. He waited then, as if expecting a more reasonable response, and if it were up to Odril, Legan, or Fillet, there no doubt would have been. But the On kept their silence. Despite their frustration, they must have known it would do them no good to beg for mercy. If they were going to die, it seemed they were going to do it with a little dignity. Now, thought Data, the only question was, had he interpreted the facts of the situation correctly, or had he doomed them all to certain destruction? 5, whispered Odril. 4, 3, 2. He shivered and looked at the view screen. 1. Looking away from them, the alien commander gestured to one of his bridge officers. Activate the weapons array, Thibra. Full power. Full power, echoed the officer, acknowledging the order with a nod for good measure. Lowering his gaze to a particular spot on her control panel, she raised her hand, then slowly and deliberately she brought it down on an oval pad, at which point nothing happened. No sizzling energy beams, no hurtling plasma packets, no fiery tachyon torpedoes, nothing. Sweet deities, murmured Fillet. The android was right. Their weapons don't work. They were bluffing the whole time. Cinna turned to Data and smiled. She didn't have to say anything. Her expression alone told the android how happy she was that she had supported him, and also how relieved. The alien commander, too, was eyeing Data with new respect. It seems, he said, you have discovered our helplessness as much as we tried to conceal it. All I ask is that you terminate us quickly. The android shook his head. We have no intention of destroying you, he explained. Our crew is no bigger or more experienced than your own, and our vessel, like yours, is defective in several key operating areas. In short, we are in the same predicament you are. Data's counterpart looked at him suspiciously. You are helpless as well? He asked. The android nodded. It seems logical that whatever happened to your ship happened to ours, and vice versa. The alien commander looked perplexed. But if you didn't set up the field that removed our senior officers, who did? Data cocked his head slightly. I confess to having no knowledge of any field, he commented. Could you provide us with relevant data? The alien shrugged. Under the circumstances, I don't see why not. A moment later, the commander's image was replaced by an array of computer graphics. Of course, the symbols on the screen were slightly different from those used by the Federation, but there were enough similarities to permit interpretation. Fascinating, muttered the android. This is the sensor log maintained by the Apsara's shipboard computer. Apsara? Repeated Cinna. Glancing at her, he nodded. That is what they call themselves. At any rate, this log shows the events that occurred just prior to the disappearance of the Apsara's senior officers. Apparently, their instruments are more sensitive than ours because, he pointed to a spot near the left-hand margin of the screen, about halfway down. At this point, they detected a rather large energy field. Large enough for a ship to pass through? Inquired Cinna, though she already seemed to know the answer. Indeed, Data responded. Large enough for several ships to pass through, if they are the size of the Yosemite. In fact, I believe that is what happened. Both our vessel and the Apsaras entered the field at roughly the same time, and experienced roughly the same conditions. Legan grunted. Are you saying that this field is what caused the disappearance of the crew and disabled the ship's systems? That would seem to be the logical conclusion, the android told him, continuing to scrutinize the symbols on the view screen. What is more, there is evidence that the field may have interacted with the Yosemite's intership communications network, possibly in an attempt to locate the Yosemite's crew via their communicators. Cinna looked at him. Then what you said earlier about our lack of communicators having saved us from disappearing with the rest of the crew? The android nodded. This does not seem to support that observation. However, it also leads us to a couple of much larger questions. First, who made the field? And second, for what purpose was it made? You're forgetting the biggest question of all, Cinna reminded him. And that's how we can convince the field makers to give our people back. She turned to the alien graphics on the view screen. All of them! You're assuming they're still alive, commented Legan. Data turned to the Ana. Though I lack instincts in such matters, Legan, I believe that our comrades have been allowed to survive. After all, there are simpler ways to destroy unwanted intruders, if destruction were the only requirement. It seems to me that the energy field is a humane defense, an advanced sort of transporter mechanism devised by a species that values its isolation. In that case, asked Fillet, why wouldn't the entire ship have been transported? The android shook his head. It may be that the field creator's technology is simply not capable of so large a task. Odro leaned forward. For the time being, let's say you're right. Do you have a plan in mind? I confess that I do not, Data answered. However, it seems clear that we must get the attention of the field creators, and alert them to the fact that neither we nor the Apsara mean them any harm. Legan snorted. How are we supposed to get the attention of a species we know nothing about? We always have the phaser banks, said Cinna. If they're in working order, they ought to at least put a dent in the energy barrier. Wait a minute, exclaimed Fillet. As the others turned to him, he swallowed hard. What if this advanced species of yours is simply collecting samples of different life forms? Are we sure we want to get their attention? Data pondered the question. If they were the sort of collectors you describe, he concluded, they would probably be actively engaged in the activity, rather than waiting for specimens to come to them. Odril nodded slowly. That makes sense. In fact, he decided, everything you've said makes sense. He turned to his fellow Jan. I think we ought to try it. The phaser plan, I mean. Legan took in a breath and let it out. We must do something, and it's the most promising option we have. Fillet nodded, albeit reluctantly. Cinna turned to Data. Then we are unanimous on this point. We will activate the phasers and try to create a stir in the energy field, no matter the outcome. The android looked at her. Again, he found himself grateful for her assistance. Very well, he responded. But first, we must speak again with the Apsara and let them know of our intentions.